Charles Lucky Luciano was always destined to rule the shadows of America. It wasn't just luck that kept him alive, but the sheer rationale within his strategizing. Lucky saw crimes as a business, and like any business, it needed a governing body to ensure efficiency. He essentially took the chaotic world of gangland warfare and imposed a corporate-like structure on it. So what exactly was the goal? Was it the sheer force of his will, his cunning, and his understanding that power in the criminal underworld wasn't about brute strength but control? Join us as we go through the life of Charles Lucky Luciano, who is fondly known as the father of modern organized crime. From the very beginning, Luciano didn't just survive, he thrived. He built a legacy not through blind fortune, but through carefully orchestrated moves in a world of crime, violence, and opportunity. Born Salvatore Luciano in 1897 in a small Sicilian village, Luciano came to the United States as a 9-year-old immigrant. His family settled in the crime-ridden streets of New York's Lower East Side. It was an environment where life was hard, and only the tough survived. But Luciano wasn't just tough, he was smart. He quickly understood that in this new world, the rules weren't the same, and if there were rules, they could be bent or broken to suit his ambition. Did young Luciano know then that he would one day shape the entire criminal syndicates of America? Perhaps not, but what he did know, even as a teenager, was how to seize power in ways others couldn't even imagine. Before he became the kingpin of organized crime, Luciano learned to rule the streets. By the age of 14, he had already dropped out of school and formed his own gang, offering protection to Jewish youngsters against Italian and Irish gangs for just 10 cents a week. It may seem like petty work, but it was here that Luciano honed his first lessons in extortion and power dynamics. For Luciano, the streets of New York became his classroom, and the lessons he learned were simple. Violence was a tool, alliances were everything, and ambition knew no limits. By the time Luciano was a young man, he wasn't just part of the notorious 5 Points gang. He was making connections with future mafia titans, like Vito Genovese and Frank Costello. This was the start of a network that would one day help him rule New York. But Luciano's genius wasn't just in his ability to make friends. It was in his understanding that the old ways of doing things were obsolete. While most gangsters of his time were content with territorial control, Luciano saw a bigger picture. Organized crime, he realized, wasn't just about local dominance. It was about building a system. Why fight over neighborhoods when you could control entire cities? Why settle for small-time rackets when you could influence entire industries? It was the vision that set Luciano apart. And it was this vision that would soon lead him to betray the very people who had taught him the ropes. By the late 1920s, Luciano was a rising star in the New York criminal underworld, working closely with powerful mob boss Joe Masseria. But Luciano wasn't satisfied being a mere lieutenant. He wanted more, and in the Mafia, there's only one way to climb to the top. You take out the people standing in your way. Masseria had been locked in a brutal war with a rival boss, Salvatore Maranzano, in what came to be known as the Castellammarese War. The violence was costly, and Luciano saw an opportunity. Why waste time and resources on endless battles when you could create a truce and rule together? So Luciano made a decision that would change the course of organized crime forever. He betrayed Masseria. On April 15, 1931, Luciano invited Masseria to a meeting at a restaurant. As they played cards, Luciano excused himself to the bathroom. Moments later, gunmen stormed the restaurant and shot Masseria dead. Luciano had eliminated one of the most powerful crime lords in New York, but he wasn't done. 6 months later, Luciano arranged for the assassination of Salvatore Maranzano as well, using Jewish gunmen to avoid suspicion. With both bosses gone, Luciano was the undisputed leader of the Mafia in New York. But he didn't stop there. He knew that the old system of Italian Mafia bosses ruling over territories had to go. In its place, Luciano created something unprecedented: the National Crime Syndicate, a governing body for all organized CVF. It wasn't just Italians. It included Jewish gangsters like Meyer Lansky and Bugsy Siegel. Luciano understood that crime wasn't about ethnicity. It was about business, and business was booming. In 1931, Luciano called a historic meeting of the top mob bosses from all over the country: New York, Chicago, Boston, New Jersey, Philadelphia, and other major cities. For the first time, leaders of various mafia families, including both Italian-American and Jewish gangsters, sat together at the table. The goal was simple: end the petty infighting, stop the needless bloodshed, and unify their criminal efforts in a way that maximized profits while minimizing chaos. At the heart of this meeting was the birth of the Commission, a governing body that would oversee organized crime in America. The structure was ingenious. Rather than having a single leader, as had been the tradition with the mafia boss of bosses, Luciano proposed a board of directors model. Each major crime family would have a representative on the commission, and together they would vote on issues concerning the criminal underworld, from territory disputes to business operations. Decisions would be made democratically, or at least as democratically as possible within a criminal enterprise. This wasn't just a simple reorganization, it was an industrialization of crime. In Luciano's eyes, crime wasn't just about territory or petty feuds. Under the Commission, power was shared, decisions were made collaboratively, and profits were maximized across the board. What Luciano created was not just a mafia, a disorganized collection of gangsters. He created a syndicate, a smoothly running operation with tentacles in every major city across the United States. Gambling, prostitution, narcotics, extortion, every major illegal operation was now under the control of an organized body. Through the National Crime Syndicate, Luciano controlled key industry in America's illegal economy. Luciano understood that Americans had an insatiable appetite for gambling, whether it was in speakeasies during Prohibition or in the early casino operations of Las Vegas. Luciano's network profited from every turn of the dice. His partnership with Lansky, in particular, helped expand gambling operations into Florida and Cuba, where international casino resorts attracted high rollers from around the world. His empire also had deep roots in New York's prostitution rings. Through his network of brothels, Luciano's crime family controlled much of the city's underground sex trade. It was this aspect of his business that eventually led to his downfall, but not before Luciano had made millions through this ruthless exploitation. Luciano's control extended into the world of unions and labor. By placing his men in strategic positions within labor unions, Luciano was able to exert control over entire industries: construction, shipping, garment making, and extract millions of dollars in extortion fees. His influence over the waterfront dogs, in particular, allowed him to control a critical part of America's economy. Through these operations, Luciano's criminal empire became one of the most powerful in the world. The true genius of Luciano's commission lay in its ability to manage disputes without resorting to the bloody gang wars of the past. The commission functioned as a court, with a representative from each of the major crime families present to mediate conflicts. If one family encroached on another's territory or challenged their operations, the commission would step in to negotiate a resolution. This drastically reduced violence in the underworld and ensured that profits remained uninterrupted. However, the commission wasn't just about keeping the peace, it was also about expansion. Under Luciano's leadership, the mafia didn't just remain a local New York operation. Luciano's criminal reach extended to Chicago, New Orleans, Philadelphia, Detroit, Los Angeles, and beyond. The commission allowed families in each of these cities to have representation, creating a national web of organized crime that funneled profits back to New York. Did he recognize that greed and cooperation could create something far more powerful than violence ever could? Perhaps that's the genius of Luciano, not his ability to kill or extort, but his ability to unify and organize. Under his leadership, the mafia transitioned from a collection of loosely connected gangs into a national institution that operated with the precision of a corporation. It's a legacy that would certainly outlast him. In 1936, Luciano's empire came crashing down when he was convicted on charges of extortion and prostitution. Thomas E. Dewey, a crusading prosecutor, had made it his mission to take down Luciano, and after a sensational trial, Luciano was sentenced to 30 to 50 years in prison. For most men, this would have been the end, but Luciano wasn't most men. Even behind bars, he remained in control, and when World War II began, Luciano saw an opportunity to make a deal with the US government that would ensure his freedom. The government needed help securing the docks in New York, which were controlled by the Mafia. Luciano used his connections to guarantee the docks remained safe from sabotage. In return, after the war, his sentence was commuted. Luciano may have been a criminal, but in this instance, he became a patriot. Or was he just playing the long game? After the war, Luciano was deported to Italy, where he continued to manage his empire from afar. But his influence over the Mafia in America was never as strong as it had been. The king had been dethroned. Charles Lucky Luciano died of a heart attack on January 26, 1962. But his influence on organized crime lived on. He had created a system that outlived him, a criminal empire that continued to operate long after he was gone. Luck may have been in his name, but it was strategy, vision, and a ruthless thirst for power that defined Charles Lucky Luciano. But he didn't just ride the wave of the Mafia. He created it, shaped it, and led it. In the end, what do you think helped Lucky build his empire? Was it his ability to see the bigger picture, to build alliances, to outthink and outmaneuver his enemies? Was it his willingness to betray, to kill, to seize power at any cost? Let us know in the comments down below. We hope you enjoyed watching the video. If you did, please like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in another episode soon.